In the late 1990s, if you were a budget-conscious gearhead looking for a lightweight, front-wheel drive performance car, your choice was almost non-existent. You bought a Honda Civic. It was reliable, aftermarket-friendly, and the magic word stamped on the valve cover, VTEC. But over in Auburn, Michigan, Chrysler looked at Japan's stronghold on the compact market and said, not on our watch. Under the leadership of legendary auto executive Bob Lutz and design chief Tom Gale, Chrysler greenlit Project PL. They set out to build a compact American car from a clean sheet of paper in a record-breaking 31 months and for under $1.3 billion. When the Dodge Neon hit the showroom floor in its 1994 debut, it was marketed with a friendly, innocent "Hi" campaign.
The enormously enjoyable 2-liter 16-valve cab-forward Dodge Neon sedan. Boy, is it big inside. Say hello to Dodge Neon at your friendly Dodge dealer.
But behind the cheerful smiling frog front bumper lurked a secret weapon, a track-focused compact specifically designed to humiliate the Civic on the racetrack. Today we're going to take a deep dive into the Neon RT. We'll analyze its mechanical hardware, test its performance against the era-defining Honda Civic EX, and figure out how a car with so much racing potential became one of the most misunderstood flops in American automotive history. To understand the Neon RT, you have to understand Chrysler's engineering team in the 1990s was full of SCCA racers. Chrysler knew that the standard commuter Neons were cheap, but they wanted something that could dominate the weekend autocross events right out of the box. First came the Ultimate Spartan, the ACR, or known as the American Club Racer, which initially sold exclusively to the SCCA racing members, and you had to have a license from the SCCA to prove it, or else you could not leave the Dodge dealership with your ACR. But in 1998, Dodge gave us everyday Joes the choice for rapid transit, the RT, so we could also have that experience somewhat, bringing those track-ready mechanicals to the mainstream buyers with a few actual creature comforts like stereo sound and air conditioning. That was a big deal in the 90s, air conditioning and stereo sound, because that was not available in every vehicle. You could still buy vehicles without AC or stereo. But one thing the Neon lacked was a CD player, which was, again, a huge deal in the 90s because we were just transitioning from tapes over to CDs. And in the mid to late, but under the hood of this Chrysler Leader 2.0 DOCH 16-valve inline-4 engine code ECC, unlike the lazy single-cam engines in most domestic subcompacts, the DOCH ECC was built to rev, screaming all the way to 7,200 500 RPMs redline. It produced a whopping 150 horsepower and 133 feet-pounds of torque. Staggering numbers for a subcompact car under 2,400 pounds. And this vehicle, I've owned one, had a go-karty feel to it. It was basically a street legal go-kart with stripes and a body kit. And Chrysler did not neuter the drivetrain either. They went full out. The RT was exclusively offered with a close ratio NVG T350 5-speed manual transmission, no slurpy 3-speed automatic here. Well, that was paired with the cheap standard Neons. They packed an aggressive 3.94 final drive ratio for quick acceleration out of tight corners, stiffer spring rates, and a heavy-duty front rear sway bars and awesome 4-wheel disc brakes, and a factory ECU that completely omitted the top speed governor, which is a big deal because people do not like top speed governors. But you could also delete those with a tuning today. It's not that hard. The Civic came with a 1.6 liter engine featuring 127 horsepower and 107 feet-pounds of torque with a 0 to 60 of of 8.5 seconds, whereas the Neon had a 0 to 60 of 7.4, and the fourth mile for the Neon was 87 miles an hour at 15.9 seconds, and 16.6 at 82 miles an hour for the Civic. So a whole whopping 5 miles an hour better. So the top speed of the Neon was 130 plus miles per hour unlimited, whereas the Civic was limited to a measly 112 miles per hour. So now let's bring in the Civic, the king of the late 90s. The 1990 Honda Civic EX was the 6th generation Civic, beloved for many reasons. It featured a butter-smooth double wishbone suspension at all four corners, razor-sharp shifter feel, and a legendary Japanese build quality. But when you look strictly at performance data, the Neon RT didn't just compete with the Civic, it utterly destroyed it. The Civic's 1.6-liter D16Y8 single overhead cam VTEC engine put out a measly 127 horsepower and a modest 107 feet-pounds of torque. The Neon RT outmuscled it by 23 horsepower and 26 feet-pounds of torque. In a straight line, the Neon could hit 0 to 60 in 7.4 seconds, a full second faster than the Civic, and cleared the quarter mile in just under 16 seconds to the dime. In a SCCA showroom, Stock C road racing, and Solo 2 autocross, the Neon platform became a juggernaut. Neon systematically wiped the floor with Civics, Miatas, Nissan Sentrics, and for years claiming multiple national championships. So if the Neon RT was faster and handled better and cost roughly the same as a Civic, why didn't every tuner buy one? So the downfall, here we go. The downfall of the Neon is a tragic masterclass in corporate cost-cutting. Chrysler engineered a race-winning chassis, but their bean counters built the rest of the car out of cheap materials. The infamous head gasket disaster. The Neon RT ultimately suffered from premature head gasket failure. The early 2.0 DOCH engines used cheap composite paper instead of multi-layered steel. But today, if you own a Neon, you can actually find multi-layered steel head gaskets to update that design. To make matters worse, one factory head bolt hole was drilled slightly too shallow, preventing proper torque sealing. Between anywhere from 30,000 to 60,000 miles, almost every original Neon blew its head gasket, leaking oil straight into the cooling system or onto the driveway. By the time Chrysler issued a proper multi-layered steel MLS redesign in the 1998, the damage to the Neon's reputation was already done. To keep the base price around $9,000, Chrysler cut corner after corner. The first generation Neon used frameless door glass and that whistled loudly at the highway speeds and leaked rainwater. The factory paint, especially the blue and white shades, and red, suffered from the delamination of peeling off of massive sheets within 3 to 4 years. On 4-door models, rear windows were strictly manual hand cranked to save manufacturing costs, even if you ordered powered windows up front. So I guess you just paid extra and they just gave you the basic options, so they literally robbed you. But the disposable car. Honda built cars meant to last 300,000+ miles. With basic maintenance, Chrysler built Neons cheap. Rental fleets bought them by the thousands, and buyers treated them as disposable appliances. While Honda Civics held their value and were preserved by the importer tuning scene, Neons were thrashed and neglected. And ultimately, you saw a lot of these in the mid 2000s by 2005. And ultimately, by 2010, there were hardly any left. Today, you can still find them on Facebook. You can still find some in former glory and in pristine condition. And you can still find some with under 10,000 miles, but very rarely. In early 2000s, Chrysler's engineer Tom McCammon and the Performance Vehicle Operations (PVO) team took the second generation Neon, bolted a 2.4-liter turbocharged 2.4-liter engine to it, and created the legendary 2003 Dodge Neon SRT4, which completely dominated the American racing scene and competed with the Ford Focus SVT, the Honda Civic, and a whole bunch of others. This SRT4 punched a 215 horsepower and became the fastest car in America for under $20,000, directly inheriting the high output, low cost ethos pioneered by the 1998 RT. The Dodge Neon RT remains one of the most fascinating what-ifs in American automotive history. It proves that Chrysler possessed the engineering brilliance and team to build a legitimate Honda Civic slayer, but lacked the quality needed to win the long game. The Neon lost the reliability war in the long run, but for a brief moment in history, a glorious moment in 1998 and the early 2000s, this weird smiling little frog gave the import world a massive wake-up call. What do you think? Was the Neon RT an underrated gem or just a disposable econobox? My thought is I've owned one before, and I thought it was a really fun car to drive around for about a year and a half till I started having major problems with it. One thing I will say about this car is it had great potential, but when Chrysler started cutting corners, they really screwed the pooch on this one. You know, I mean, they really just screwed it. So, but ultimately, you can still find both vehicles on the road, and you can buy one yourself and restore it, or you can find one already restored, but pretty expensive. And both vehicles are a legendary piece in automotive history and will always be remembered throughout history. Like and subscribe for more in-depth automotive content. See you next time.